So despite the fact that there are equal opportunities, women or girls in that sense are not able to access them. So we need to adopt conscious strategies at that point of time to be able to enable women to take benefits of those equal opportunities, or to be able to enable girls those benefits to those opportunities. And this process is called gender equity. So that is the difference between equality and equity, whereas equality is an outcome, equity is a process. And I'll give another example, which you would, I hope, and I guess would be able to relate to, is the fact that when you look at many financial institutions or banks, right, they create many financial products. And these financial products, they come up with financial benchmarks. So for example, they come with credit ratings, etc. They come up with risk assessment, etc. And the assumption is that okay, these financial products are created, and these both women and men entrepreneurs would access them equally. But what happens is that due to the absence of adequate collateral, and this comes from the long drawn marginalization that women face. So for example, in India there is, and in many countries, there is a flaw in inheritance right, where women are denied access to inheritance right. So because of these long-standing discrimination, women have lack of access to collateral, and that is why when they go and try to fulfill those financial benchmarks, they are unable to do so, right? So they are unable to fit into that credit rating and risk assessment analysis that the financial institutions do. So what is required? What is required then is the alternate financial benchmarks, keeping into consideration the requirement of women entrepreneurs, coming back from the fact that they have historically been marginalized in their inheritance rights, and that's how there is a need to address their concerns and address their requirements. So this is the process of equity. Once there are processes in place, there are strategies in place that take into consideration the differential needs of women and men. So that is what the gender equality and gender equity concepts are. And now we would gear up for a quick poll. I would request Eva to please have a poll around this fact, so that you also reflect on some of these concepts that I have just talked about. Eva, over to you.
Alrighty, so you all can click "Did you" at the start. Awesome, it's good to see some people already joining. Did you at the start of your entrepreneurial venture ever think that you will face challenges in setting up the business because of gender? So super interesting. I love watching the poll results come in. Thank you, Britta, for setting this up. Really interesting. So it sounds like most people did not necessarily expect that. If you haven't already, keep chiming in. This is super valuable information. And in a moment, I know Sohaila will get to hear about what the experience actually was, if that was the same as or different from your expectations. Great. Okay, super interesting. Go for it, Sohaila.
Can we see the results, Eva?
Yes. So thank you, Britta. Thank you. So 62% of you said that you did not expect challenges, and 38% of you said that you did.
Which is quite informative, also because of the fact that we are at this point of time have also become conscious, and there are sensitivities around this entire issue of gender equality. So women do know, or there, because there is a lot of information around this issue, that women do know that this is something which could come up to them. But even if not in the area of entrepreneurship, I mean, I'm sure they would have felt this, and they would have noticed this in their own lives at some point of time. So we'll be happy to hear about what kind of challenges you have faced, not only in your entrepreneurial ventures, but it could be related to your personal life as well. Now that 38%, which is quite significant, have said that they did anticipate it to be facing, and also if those who did not think that they will face, and they have now faced. Now they are into the business. So would like to hear from them. So Eva, over to you.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Suhaila. Super interesting also to hear that equity is a process. I really like that for you. So now we will take about 10 minutes for you all to go into breakout rooms. And while Berta is setting these up, we'll be split up into 3 rooms. So there will be large groups of us. So let's practice listening. And this will be a chance for you all to share. So what challenges maybe did you face related to gender? And then what were the steps that you took to address those challenges? So maybe the steps worked, maybe they didn't, but we would love to start to hear live, kind of based on what you expected, what actually ended up being a challenge that you faced related to gender. So again, yeah, thank you for already starting to write in the chat, that's great. So Berta, whenever you're ready, you can send us into breakout rooms. And for those who haven't done breakout rooms before, you will get an invitation to join a breakout room. You will be sent off. This is Zoom magic, so we don't know who will be paired with who, but you will either have Katya, Suhaila, or myself in your breakout room. And again, this is a chance for you to share one challenge you face related to gender and how you addressed it. And you will be pulled automatically back in about 10 minutes. Awesome, okay. And then Berta, just let me know whenever they're ready to go. And for those of you who haven't done it before, just look down at the bottom of your screen in Zoom and you can see a breakout room option and you can click to join breakout rooms. So
actually everyone will be moved automatically, so no clicking required, and I would open them now, Eva, if that's okay.
Let's go for it. Thanks so much.
Okay, see you soon.
They didn't expect a woman because my name is such that, they don't realize the gender. It's a unique name. And the bankers are a little bit stunned and, oh, you want to export? Do you know what is export? Then I have to say, see, I have learned, I have certified myself. So I had faced issues in, do you know what finance is? Do you have somebody to guide you properly in finance, in your exports? And you know what are the risks? I didn't want to involve my husband, who is a risk management specialist, but at times, I had to bring him because I get grilled and grilled and grilled. 4 or 5 meetings. It took 2-3 months to get my finance through, but I did. Yeah. So
I know we all.
But in that, I achieved on my own was important to me as an entrepreneur.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think people were coming back as this last group was wrapping up, but I know in our group, super, just a lot of common ground, and definitely a lot of challenges. So Suhaila, I will hand it back over to you. I know we're going to hear from a couple people from each group, so I will let you take over from here.
Sure, thank you so much, Eva. So we had a wonderful conversation, and I would like to give the opportunity to anybody, Navdeep, Deepa, Dekha, Ihtishan, whoever shared, please go ahead and put whatever conversation we had in our group across the wider group.
Hi, so I'll just go ahead and just sum it up. So we had good contribution from Barka, from Itashri and Mamta, and everybody was just sharing challenges that they felt, during the registration process, or even as to like various issues felt from home. And Mamta was sharing that, though she came from a IT background also, how she was almost like pushed out to leave that company and, start this golden venture. So, I was just sharing my opinion that where I came from, and I started the venture almost 10 years back. I had already experienced that, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be this, but it's just like, I was just sharing with everyone that, how ruthlessly I'll just focus that this is what I want to get, and I'll just get it no matter what. And I forgot her name, but she was just sharing that, say somebody, me versus a man who would come across, then, a female entrepreneur would be perceived as rude or
Yeah, that was me.
yeah. Yes, Rameshwari, I forgot your name. I was so involved hearing you that I didn't write your name down. I didn't jot your name down, but call I just remembered. So it is the perception, but the fact of the matter remains that if we get stuck with what people are going to perceive, and then our focus just gets lost. So this is just my personal opinion, and this is just how I work about things, that I just have to go back to focus what I really need to get at, and just go ahead working towards things. So that's about that, and that was from our group.
Thank you, Deepa. I think one of the things, I'll quickly add a point, that one of the things that was also discussed was the fact that how the orders from females or women entrepreneurs or women are not taken seriously, and they feel that they are too bossy, and they can't expect, men cannot expect to take the orders from women. So that is also something that you know. But over to you. Over to the next group. Eva, was it you that were facilitating?
Yeah, so Shilpa, would you like to summarize what came up in our group?
Surely, Eva, thank you. Thank you to Sahela as well. So what we briefly discussed, and we were, I think, 4 or 5 of us, Mayura, Vasanthi, Ujjwala, Margaret, and Eva pitching in. So what women face definitely is problems with the government officials or custom officials. So they are these people of authority, and one of the things that we come across is like women are not taken that seriously. So the gender bias does come in there. There's a lot of things that women, whether single or married, working with weavers or other craftspeople or in general, they're not really taken seriously, because it's like considered as, in India we call it as a time pass. Otherwise it's like a woman just doing something for a hobby and just for her passion, and may not be taken seriously. Maybe it's just for a while. As well as Ujjwala also brought out rightly the point wherein when you interact with craftspeople, or especially the whole community of weavers, so the women who are supporting, not just supporting, actually they have active roles in the spinning processes or the weaving processes. They are considered as helpers and not as actual weavers. They're not given that kind of respect or credit, and that kind of lacks. So these are the problems that a lot of these issues that women all over India face. Personally, adding mine, I would say that I live in Delhi, and we have these cramped up places for maybe not as cramped up as Bombay and other places, but still cramped up places in Delhi for sourcing with different kind of fabrics or materials, or be it any kind of trims and stuff. And from the very beginning, I personally find it very, very hard to just go by myself. So I sort of, initially I had to. So, when I faced some problems, I would start taking my mom, because she was pretty bold, and she was very well acquainted with our area called Chandni Chowk, and going in those alleys, because there's a lot of sexual abuse that goes on when you're walking through these markets. You're like touched and felt, and things like that happen. So I used to be really, really scared. And yeah, so in the future, of course, how I solved the problem was obviously by keeping people who could, either a runner or my own master who could just fetch me things. So that's something how I solved it. So yeah, these are the issues. Even Vasanthi sort of rightly pointed out that during one time there was an official who had come, and I think they sort of passed remarks in their office. We don't really know what it was all about, but we can kind of understand and gauge that these kind of things really happen. And younger entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, they're not really taken very seriously. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shilpa.
Thank you. Katya, you also had a group conversation facilitated by you. Can you please let us know if you would share, or you would identify somebody from the group to share?
We had a really lively conversation, and I think Anjali is sharing for the whole group.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Oh, you're gonna share? Great. Go for it.
Yeah, we had a lot of youngsters, telling us that how it was very difficult for them to get credit facility, and they would always would be asked to bring back either their husband or their father to kind of negotiate, and how they had really worked hard to win over it. And we also had another candidate who said that. Her disability was a common issue, and she had problems with women too, and how she was able to overcome it. And personally, for me, because I run a buying house and I represent customers overseas, my business is predominantly run by men, and I'm always seeing whether I'll buckle it to pressure. But it's always been that I want to work harder and harder and do that. I'm not going to. I'm going to be here for a long term, and I'm not going to give in. And we also don't get because we are a trading house. We don't get any credit facility. But it's always been, that just focus on what you're doing and work harder and be sincere, and you'll definitely get there. And that is my story. Thank you.
Can I add one more point, which I found really interesting in our conversation in this context, when we also speak about working with more corporates together in bigger value chains. I found really interesting that in every step of a value chain, if you look at this, you describe discrimination, not only to getting access to finance, which we've heard just right now, but then even kind of it doesn't stop at the client base, like clients challenging if you have only women working on certain machines, you are not as productive because there are not men working there. So I just found it quite fascinating that it goes through every single step of a business operation, and it doesn't stop necessarily on just managing the business as the business owner. So I found that quite an interesting observation as well. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you all for sharing, and I have quickly summed up. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just had a point here to make. Yeah, that women empowerment is the key to actually the economic development of a country, nation, business, everything. So I've seen, we have a Swami in India, in Asia. He's called Swami Vivekanand. He's no more now, but there was a saying which he said that like the bird needs two wings. Similarly, for any country, any nation, any economy to prosper, we need men and women together to work together. Now, if we look at the lower strata, you can see that some of these women, because they are not given education right from childhood, so that's why their journey becomes so challenging, that everybody thinks that they are less intelligent, they don't have the knowledge of logistics, of accounting. And I can see that. I run a woman-owned company, and I see these kind of thoughts which their husbands have about their wives. And also this inequality of labor. I'm often asked that you can pay them less, just take them. You can even pay them less, And this is something which I don't like, because I want to create the equality. So this is the point I wanted to share with you. Yeah.
Sorry to continue with this conversation, but it is very close to me, because since last month I've been trying to train women karigars. And whoever comes to know about this, the first reaction they give is, you can just pay them 6,000 or 7,000 rupees and your production cost is going to come down really low. So, and my reaction to that is that, if they can, and if they do produce as much as what men are doing right now, then why should I pay them 1/3 or 1/4 of what I'm paying the other guys? I mean, I don't work that way at all.
Thank you so much for putting that point. And to respond to, I did not intend to respond because I don't have that much time, but I would like to respond to Anu, that it's also not, it's across board. It's not just about rural women. Even if you would look at the urban women, the discrimination persists in one form or another, right? You would see the violence issues. NCW has reported so many issues of violence against women now that we are working from home because of this pandemic. We insisted on working from home since long, because we thought that this would enable women to share the care, to manage their care responsibilities as well as their work. and that would enable them to what their economic advancement, right? But what has we seen now as a result of the pandemic, that work from home is also not safe, and there are incidences of domestic violence. So discrimination, even in one form or another, be it rural women, be it urban women, is faced by her. So it's a phenomena that is applicable to every woman irrespective. But very quickly, I think some points that also came up in the discussion, which are very interesting, was also the fact that I think Barkha in my group mentioned that she never got, or Mamta mentioned that she never got better appraisal just because of being a woman. And also somebody also shared about the invisibility, that how women entrepreneurs and women workers generally are invisible in the entire system and entire value chain. And there was a care burden that was come up, and I think it was Ishita, or I'm not getting the name right, but she shared that how despite the fact that she was in different state, she still had to run with her children to seek the facility of a doctor, and her male colleagues not even being sensitive to that issue or being trying to address that issue. So we see multiple kind of challenges that exist. And we intended to have a poll, but now that these points have already come up, I'll just share some top lines, points that have come up. One is of course the burden of care work and balancing equal responsibility. Then this points of traits, being judged for certain traits did come up in our conversation. Access to finance just spoke. But also some of the things which did not come up was also the fact that despite talent, women are timid. They downplay their own abilities and they don't come up with. But we do have examples like Barkha, who is just ready to rock the world. And also the fact that because of the lack of access to networks, because they are involved in so many different chores, responsibilities, dual responsibilities, that they hardly find time to access the network, which is also important. We at UN Women did a quick survey with women entrepreneurs. Of course, it was done during the time of pandemic, but we asked them. It was across 7 countries. And India had, I think, 150. The sample size of India was 150, so it's quite representative of Indian entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. So they said that one is that of course they request support in creating that access to networks, also increasing visibility that come up, and facilitating access to finance. But when it comes to, and of course they had their gender needs as well, and learning needs as well. They wanted that how they can take proactive steps to procure more from women-owned enterprises, so that the discrimination and bias doesn't creep in their value chains and they are able to establish or create gender responsive business. And also to see that how their marketing practices would be more responsive and not promoting a stereotype. Coming on to the next slide.
And so, Hila, would you mind sharing your slides again?
Oh, sorry. Am I not showing? I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Just
great. Thank you. Super. While you're pulling those up, super rich discussions, and it's neat also just to hear about the bigger context. If there was any proof needed that these are not singular situations that you're facing alone. Yeah. Of course, Eva, that's a very good point that you have brought in, and I wanted to reflect on the fact that this is not an individual instances. This is a pattern. An entrepreneur here and there, if you talk to them, they would have similar experiences to share. So these are not one-off incidences. These are patterns, systematic patterns that happen with women entrepreneurs. So I talked about this slide, but moving on to the next slide. Yeah, so access to finance was something that came up quite frequently in our conversation, in our survey, and also colleagues here and friends here spoke about. Now, there is a research that was published by Boston Consulting, which says that although an average female business owner receives half the level of investment of their male counterparts, yet they produce more than twice the revenue. So, the value of investing in women-led businesses is
is great for economy, right? We have statistics that say that trillions of dollars could be added into the global economy if women are given equal opportunity as workers, as entrepreneurs. But then still they face issues in accessing finance, and that could be just because the bankers, and that because the bankers don't feel confident about the women's proposals, or they would every time they would like to have them accompanied by a male person to be able to prove their point that okay, something can be done. This is a gender bias that creeps in, right? And also lack of collateral, which is something which we discussed during our conversation back as well. But one of the things which also impacts a lot when it comes to women's access to finance is this entire trade scene, right? So because of the gender division of labor, right from the from historical times, men are expected to perform certain roles. They are expected to perform economic activities, and that is why they're considered more agentic, meaning that they are somebody who are in control of economic resources. They are in control of decision making. They have the confidence and ability. And women are considered more communal because of the gender division of labor. They are expected to devote their time to household chores. So they are thought somebody who invest a lot in relationships and are attuned to others. That is why these two characteristics, men as agentic and women as communal, are seen as traits. Now, what happens is that in our popular thinking on women's entrepreneurship, even in our research and writing, there are certain traits like autonomous, decision-making, overconfidence, need for control, etc. are considered as male traits, right? Now, and if women demonstrate them, which they will, because these traits have nothing to do with gender, right? These are gender neutral traits. They will demonstrate it. Then they are catcalled, or they are labeled, right? For example, for some traits of voicing over or decision making or confidence, men will be considered as leaders, but the women at the same time will be called too bossy or too aggressive or being difficult. And that is how their and I just relate, going back to what I think Mamta said about that they don't receive positive ratings. All these traits play a role while they are being rated, while they are being promoted. So that is what these traits, that gender bias traits, have done to us, and what is how it impacts women. Women has to spend a lot of time. Women entrepreneurs have to spend a lot of time in in facing and overcoming these. In times when they start creating relationships, etc. These traits, stereotypical traits, hinder that. When they try to access finance, these traits come into play. Also, at the same time, not to ignore the fact that women do downplay their own ability, right? And they it's a complicated issue. What should be done about this? One thing definitely we need to do is to proactively change the labels. And as women entrepreneurs, and as somebody who cares about this, needs to create these dialogues and create these platforms to recalibrate this entire discussion of traits. And that is something which we should commit to. And when we speak about, on public forums about entrepreneurship, I think that's something which we should definitely think about in our conversation. Now, again, another important issue that came up was something which is the dual responsibility or the care burden, right? Now, globally, women spend some 2.6 times as much unpaid care work and domestic work as men. But in India, it is 9.8 times as per UPI. And I would not like to go into the details of what unpaid care work is, but I do want to state the fact that disproportionate care burden by women have great repercussions on their economic, social, political development, and also their right to leisure, right? And it's so that the leaders from all the 170 countries, included recognizing and redistributing unpaid work as one of the indicators in Sustainable Development Goals and Gender Equality Goal 5. So, it is something which I think a lot of conversations happened in my group about this care work issue. And I would like to say that, this is not something which you as an individual are facing and should be recognizing, but now the time has come that it has to be recognized at a wider stage, and it is being recognized in one form that, it has been integrated into those indicators for sustainable development. But how to address these challenges? So there is a framework called 3Rs, which is recognize, reduce, and redistribute. That's being created by feminist economists and the institutions working in the area of promoting gender equality. Now, recognize. It is very important, right? The fact to recognize that this burden, this proportionate burden, is shared by women. Until and unless you recognize, you won't take action. So the right step is to firstly recognize it, and then action should be taken to reduce it. How it could be reduced? There has to be infrastructural facilities that have to be provided by the government, or there could be entrepreneurial solutions, say for example, towards child care, towards elderly care, towards care of sick, etc. Or if you are working with women producers and farmers, they have to spend a long time fetching water, right? They have to go to a long distances, and that restricts them their time to participate in the economic activity. What could be done? Government could create an infrastructure, a simple hand pump near to their community, right? Or provision of clean energy and clean access to clean fuel. These are some of the things that we have to take into consideration while reducing women's unpaid work. And finally, it's redistribution. Like, we have to really start talking about this, that okay, this is something which is a gender division of labor. This is something which has been created and which can be changed, right? We can do it by having a conversation with our sons, right? To be able to tell them that okay, washing a dish is as equal your responsibility as a responsibility of the daughter. We have to speak up with our partners to be able to realize them that okay, this is something which needs to be changed and this is not my responsibility. Many brands have come up and they are taking initiatives like sharing the load, etc., right, where they are projecting this disproportionate care burden issue. But I think what we need to do is that we should be conscious about the fact that this is something which is not being faced by individuals. It is a thing. More important, it is something which is subsidizing our economy. Imagine if women stopped taking care of household for a day. Your husband would not be able to go to work. Your children would not be able to go to school. So women, because of their unpaid work, are subsidizing the economy. And we have to, to be cognizant of the fact that how we, through our products, through our initiatives, through our conversations, stop this culture of sharing of the unpaid care work by women. So I think I have passed my time, and I'll stop here and I'll hand over to Katya to have more conversation around how how you can address some of these challenges while you are creating them. Over to you, Katya.
Thank you very much, Suela, and I always enjoy seeing you so passionate. And speaking about unpaid care work, I just want to warn you very quickly. I have an unpaid care work issue outside my room, which is crying already the whole time. Where's mommy? So if there is suddenly someone joining us, that's potentially going to happen. So just to warn you. But what I would love to do now in the next 15 minutes, to really share a little bit more, and say, if you could kind of move the slides, that would be amazing. Why is gender equality critical? And I try to kind of put this into three categories. And I think the first one, which we very often forget, it's just simply what we've heard the whole first hour from you, by just listening to examples of inequality and just seeing how rights are violated. I remember the example, Shruti, you shared with us, that you could not access finance because you were not married or your father wouldn't come, even though it was nowhere meant in policies or legislation that it should be the case. So first of all, why gender equality is so important is because it's a human rights case. And I love the second area, which is more sort of the economic case, and we call this always the business case. There is a business case for this. And I loved, Anushada, metaphor like the bird needs two wings. I think I don't gonna quote anymore the 4.5 trillion statistics that we have been hearing for so many times, what the lost economic opportunities for countries in Asia Pacific is by not really driving gender equality or women's economic empowerment. And I think the kind of picture that you have painted will probably stick much more to all of us, to really help not only your own businesses to grow, but really to help the economy to grow. That's where gender equality is needed for. And the third one, which very often is forgotten, and I think it was a bit of insight when we started the discussion around the industry disruptor, there's a lot of research and insights out there on studies that really demonstrate that women are more likely, if they are having businesses, that they not only invest in their own families in the first place, but that they also invest much more in sustainability related issues, that they are much more worried about sustainability and social causes. So I think by bringing these elements together, I don't think there's any reason why not working on gender equality and pushing, accelerating this. And I saw somewhere in the chat, someone said, let's not forget, we are on the fly. Gender equality is, how is it? Let's remember that winds of change are in favor of women. So I think this is a really great kind of spirit as well. But yet I have to say there's also some downplaying news. If you look in our region, not only in India, but in the wider Asia region, Asia Pacific, it's the only region in the world where women's labor force participation has been regressing over the last couple of years. And I don't think that people know that and realize this, because everyone thinks about Asia as flourishing and more. We see obviously also a lot of good examples around women having their own businesses. But if you really look at the totality, we are by far being equal. And I think it's nothing which we should stop our movement. And I just want to give a little bit more zoom into the sort of business case, because I feel this is something which also might resonate much more with you as entrepreneurs in your own companies. So Ella, if you just quickly move on to the next slide. So what is it actually what gender equality brings to businesses? And I don't think I need to really explain this to you, but there are like 4 areas that we always try to kind of explain when we're speaking to also bigger businesses that we are working with, that all to a lip service are very much endorsing gender equality, but very often don't see the rationale from a business perspective to this. And what I think you have heard this last week with Sonika, which I unfortunately missed that interesting talk, but I think women are a source of innovation for many companies, and this really kind of ties into where does your market growth come from. The fastest growing consumer group in the world are women. So if you design and innovate your products and services as a company without that target group in mind, you are missing out a big market opportunity for yourself as an entrepreneur, as a company. And equally, I think when we speak about trust and credibility of companies, we know that consumers become more sensitive across the world. So not in India specific, but it's something what we see happening across the world. So I don't think we get along with women being such a big consumer group to not really serve them. And the last area about cost savings and productivity, maybe you've heard about this already today as well. But very often we see that women are more productive. We have seen studies, particularly I work quite a bit in India and agricultural service. Women are very often more productive than their male counterparts. So, and by cost savings, by no means I want to mean lower wages here. I just want to be very clear. It's really focused on the productivity. But why do companies not yet really act up on much more on gender equality, and how can we make it easier to think about this? And so UN Women and Global Compact, which is another large organization, have a couple of years ago developed sort of framework on the next slide, which we call the Women's Empowerment Principles, which is actually really, we call them the WEPs, as you see on the slide here, is a set of 7 principles, and you can envision them over the value chain. So going back to this value chain visual, I think it's quite for you to think about your enterprise, and I'm sure many of you do this intuitively already, and I don't want to come over as sort of lecturing, but sometimes I find kind of putting this into a frame helps sometimes to consciously think about gender equality, not only from one part, but really across the entire value chain. We know that you are passionate leaders, and we have heard this, and we know that gender equality is something what is truly intrinsic to your leadership. But if you think about your business around the workplace, if you look at the employees that you are having, someone said before, well, I could be much more profitable if I would employ more women because they are cheaper labor force. But it's exactly that what we don't want, and where there is a responsibility as an entrepreneur, really think about the employers. What kind of policies or what kind of approaches, support mechanisms do you have in place to really support people that are working for and with you? That could range from providing understanding and mental support of all the challenges that you are aware yourself, but really reaching to sort of really elements like being very firm about my employees all get equal wages, for example. So there's a lot around workplace principles that the Women's Empowerment Principles incorporate. The second area, which we summarize as the marketplace, and I'm going to share a couple of examples after, but which we are really looking at how do you source or produce the products or services that you are selling, or how do you market them?
And Katya, I think we might have lost you for just a moment. Great. Yeah. Great, you're back now. We lost you for just a moment, Katya.
Oh,
when you said how do you support them?
Support them in the marketplace or not? Did you hear already the marketplace? Yeah. Yeah.
From marketplace would be great.
Okay, great. And the last element is something. What is a very important thing is that there is a big risk seeing that gender equality, as we rightly said, and which is great, gets more higher on the agenda, and more companies fortunately act up on this. But very often there is no transparency, there's no reporting, and we don't actually really see what is happening, and can we hold companies accountable. So I think the whole sort of, are you really monitoring gender-related data or impacts that you are having as a company? And to make this less theoretical, I want to give you 3 examples of enterprises or companies on how they, for example, act up on the women's empowerment principles. The first company is a company called SheWorks, and I'm not sure if you have heard about SheWorks. It's an Indian lady, Ankiti Bosa, who is the CEO of this company, which is operating in Thailand, in India, in Singapore. It's basically a virtual marketplace for selling fashion. And basically what they're also doing is they're providing end-to-end service for companies and producing certain products, from t-shirts to whatever. And what she realized, she said, like, well, we are producing fashion for women, but how can we really work and more with women in our entire value chain and support them in becoming valuable not beneficiaries, but employees in our value chains. And so one of the insights we have heard about today already from Suela is a lot of women stop working when they're having children or getting married and need to stay home. So basically, one of the things she has piloted, and it's not working everywhere in every context, but we have been supporting her and working in some areas with her on this, is really supporting women to have more home-based businesses as well, and still be able to deliver to their bigger value chain. So they do not need to go to factories, but they can work from home and still produce there. So she's kind of trying to overcome this issue by bringing the workplace to home, which has a lot of other issues related to this as well. But I just want to give you some ideas around what enterprises are doing. The second enterprise, where it's more about selling or marketing your products, is an enterprise, also an Indian enterprise called Dharma Life. On the next slide, please. And Dharma Life is an enterprise which has a network of 15,000 women entrepreneurs in rural India that are becoming sales agents for different products, from cook stoves to selling sanitary pads, selling personal hygiene products in a wider sense, etc., etc. But also women that providing health education or behavioral change campaigns in villages related to some of the products that they are selling. So this is just an example on how in your value chain, how do you sell your products? Is there a way that you can bring a gender lens to that? So it's not only how you design all your products, what your products are, but also how you produce them, as we've heard, and how you sell them in this case. And the third one, as an example, is obviously if you want to be successful in selling, and I appreciate some of you have much more B2B businesses, but some of you might have also really selling to consumers in a direct way, is how do you market your products? If you are doing communication campaigns, advertisements, how are you really kind of, we call this unstereotype them, and Suela can surely share a little bit more offline around an initiative which UN Women is leading. It's called the Unstereotype Alliance, but really looking at how you communicate. Are you, I give you a great example. We had a webinar a couple of weeks ago with some fashion producers from Myanmar and Vietnam. And the lady said to me, the one that was speaking, she was in the room, and in the back end, she had a picture of a woman in lingerie sitting like they're like very stereotypical, like what you don't want to see in advertisement. And we were talking about gender equality. So I had to ask and say, like, is this the way how you advertise your products? And she said, oh, this is very old. We're not doing this yet anymore. So I'm just kind of being conscious about how do you communicate, and really, are you reinforcing certain stereotypes or not? An example here of Real, which is a Unilever brand in India, which has started to shift their whole sort of campaign around sharing housework or sharing in this case laundry work between husband and wife. So there are different ways to do this, but really my just kind of one message to you after 10 minutes of monologue on this one is really thinking throughout every step of your business on how can you be more gender sensitive, and how could you really add a lens to that. And a last one, and that's more an engaging one, is which I would like to share with you an opportunity. So as I said, we are building this community over the past 10 years of companies that are parts of our women's empowerment principles community. We call this the WEBS community, which is a community of CEOs and companies that are really sharing, that are coming together, sharing experience. We are conducting trainings, but also these companies get visibilities to wider networks and access to networks that UN Women, for example, has. And so one thing we really observe over the past years, that it's still very male dominated, and it's very often the bigger companies that are part of this network. So we would love to see more of young entrepreneurs, smaller companies, female-led companies to become part of that bigger network. It's a global network, so it's not only in India, it's not only in Asia Pacific, it's really a global network, and Suela is doing a great job to facilitating this one in India. So we would love to get you involved here, really join us if you would like to do this. It's a very simple commitment commitment letter that we need, and we will take you on a journey where you can get more learnings out of this, more connections. As we've kind of do this now with the community, there is a webs community which might be less young and dynamic as this one, but really certainly has also access to bigger companies and probably networks that are interesting also for you as women entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general in India. So by this, I would love to just kind of call out an invitation and saying, if you would be willing to join us, really do this. There is a lot more to this very quickly. We can be sharing much more information about this, but I think something what is really interesting in this journey is we also have very simple tools that will help you to analyze actually what I described before as the value chain on how does this look like for your own enterprises, where do you have gaps, and then we can recommend trainings or provide support on how to overcome some of these gaps that you might still have as an enterprise. And it's really a journey that is on your own pace. So by this, I think I close my part of the session here. Sorry, it has been a little bit theoretical, but I hope still informative. And I think last to close the session before we go in a deeper role play as well, it would be great to understand or just get a little bit of a pulse check from your end, if you think this framework of the webs is an interesting one to apply, and if you have interest in joining us. And I think, Fred, we have another poll that will help us to measure a little bit the temperature in the room. Here we go. Well, we can all sing up for the webs, but I think the question instead of cheering up is, would you be interested in joining us as a community of practice for the women's empowerment principles in India and Asia Pacific, and even at global stage? Yes or no?
Lovely. That was a perfect, and apologies, that was my typo. That was a perfect typo though. We can sign up and sing up. It's great already. Okay, so this is lovely. I'll just shout out as we're going. Already 39 of you had said yes, you want to join. And Katya, just while the rest of people are chiming in, thank you so much to Katya and Sohaila. I think I wrote down so many notes. I saw it in the chat. This really resonated, and I think you gave us so much valuable context, but then also really nice examples of how people are creating more gender equity, this process of gender equality in many different aspects of the value chain. So just so appreciate, I know this is a passion of both of yours, and I can tell it's a passion for all of us in the room. So yeah, just thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's such a gift to have UN Women and We Empower Asia be standing up for this and to be opening this opportunity, I think, for the women's empowerment principles and that network to this group. So really awesome. Wow, 42 people already said yes, they want to sign up. So
do you sign up a male member who's doing this to empower women in India?
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead, Sohaila.
So I'm saying you are our he for she already.
I'm probably the minority in the group. I want to take a few words, or at least 1 minute for me to.
So please.
I am in US and I am supporting my partner in India. Our brand is VG, Women Empowerment and Gender Equality. And I'm kind of this way to give back to the community. And only one thing I want to tell all the women here: don't let anybody treat you like you are a woman. Ask and demand equal treatment, and don't treat your kids. If you have a girl child, don't treat her like a girl. Raise them as a boy, or don't, even if you have a boy, don't raise them as a boy. Treat them equally.
I hear from your point, humans, right?
Yes,
that is
humans. I have
succumbing to gender norms and treat people with
I have 2 kids and I raise them equally, and I don't have any bias, and that's been as a culture, and I've seen this in India as a culture. We have been raised and we discriminate right from the young age. We should not allow for the next generation.
Oh, thank you so much for speaking up. I know it takes guts to speak up as a minority, so as our...
Yes, yes, I would agree. And coming this from a men's mouth, if I may say so, it's really something which is very encouraging. Yeah.
Just wanted to add one thing, that we are all products and victims of our environment. So in India, we have had such unjust traditions, and now I think the biggest change we could do, whether it's urban or whether it's rural, anywhere, is to take up these conversations on the dining table, where parents are actually talking equally to both the boy and the girl, So I think it has to start from the grassroots,
Yeah, thank you so much, Anu. That's a really nice point, actually, I think, for us to bring into closing, because as we were all planning this session, Katya and Sohaila and I and the Do School team, what we wanted to offer at a closing was actually to do exactly that. So to practice what's one conversation that you would like to have in your life, where you could bring in these women's empowerment principles. And so for it'll be our last about 15 minutes, we'll actually invite you to go into groups, and these will be smaller groups. These will be groups of about 3 people, so maybe a few more. And you will have, Britta, let's say 12 minutes, just that we have time back in the main group. Great. You'll have 12 minutes. And take a moment now to reflect. What you're going to do is you will actually get to role play a conversation in your life that you wish had gone differently, or that you want to have next. So this could be with a customs officer, this could be with an artisan, this could be with a spouse, this could be with a daughter or a parent. But just think about, what is a conversation that you wish had gone differently? Or what's a conversation that you would like to have next? And I'm sure there are a ton of possibilities after hearing about all of the challenges that people deal with. And what you will do is, in the breakout rooms, we're just going to have a chance for one round of this. One person will volunteer to share their situation. They'll take 1 minute to describe the situation. So, okay, I'll take 1 minute. You will be my spouse, and here's the conversation that we'll have. Then the remaining minutes, you will actually be the person who you would be talking to. So you're going to change roles. So I would play my spouse. My partner in the group would play me. And then the third person will be a witness. And that witness will have a chance at the end to reflect and share what they noticed, and possibly a piece of advice if the person is open to it. So again, just to recap, you'll have time in groups of 3 or about 3 people. One person, be quick to volunteer, describe your situation, cast someone as you, and you become the person who you would like to have this conversation with. So any questions, go ahead and write in the chat. I'll take just 1 minute to answer any questions that come up. And yes, I saw the question. Great, absolutely. So I know Katya and Sohaila will share the invitation to join the Women's Empowerment Principles community. Excited to have 42 and maybe more of you sign up. So it looks like maybe no questions about the exercise. So let's go ahead. Berta, you can send us off into groups, and we'll give you a heads up. Berta, would you mind giving us a 3-minute heads up before we close? Great, okay. And at 3 minutes before you close, just make sure that the witness has had a chance to reflect. So enjoy. Thank you for taking time to sort of warm up to these conversations that you will have. And yeah, look forward to seeing you back in the main group for our closing after this breakout exercise.